Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Katharina Nocun. I'm a privacy activist, and I started to become a political human being when they tried to introduce data retention in Germany. And yeah, I studied economics, and during the years of studying, I never had the impression that there was so much in common talking about privacy and talking about economics. But when I wrote my master thesis, I decided that I would like to do some research about decentralized social networks. Because in the past years, there were a lot of debates about the current state of the internet. And as the previous talk already mentions, we have a situation, we reached a situation where just a handful of large corporations, such as Google or Facebook, control large parts of the flows on the internet, especially concerning our private data. I mean, one example, when you talk about numbers and Facebook, every fifth human being logs in on Facebook at least once per month. And if Facebook was a state, it would have more inhabitants than the Americas or China. So we are talking really about the critical infrastructure of democracy. And for me, it's threatening that something like a corporation is in a position to control information about what's the situation between my friends and me, or between my boyfriend and me. For me, from my point of view, it's a problem that corporations such as Facebook are controlling this critical infrastructure, because looking at the numbers, Facebook is not a social network. Facebook is an advertisement company. And I just looked up how much worth, like one set of data, one average user is to Facebook. And yeah, like one average user in Europe generates revenue about $4.50. And if someone would just go to you on the street and offer you €5 and ask you, yeah, for €5, you will just give me all the data you have stored in your social network account, and you give me all this private conversation, all these emojis, maybe your relationship fights and everything. Would you sell this for €5 a year to a corporation? And I think I wouldn't, and most people would not. And I don't think that most people are on Facebook because Facebook just is the best social network. In fact, it isn't. We are all on Facebook, or most people are on Facebook because everyone else is on Facebook. And this is called the network effect. And when we look at other markets, and as an economist, that's something you do. You look at other markets, how we fix such problems. When you look at the telephone market, for example, we have laws in place that force companies to allow interconnection between different telecommunication networks. So I can, for example, be with Telefonica, and I still can communicate with someone who signed up with Deutsche Telekom, just because they share an interconnection, or interconnection is in place. But Facebook is not interested to do that. Facebook uses this network effect in order to build gated communities. This means that there are a lot of different small social networks around Facebook, but Facebook builds high walls around their users and doesn't allow to connect with their users. And this is a problem because, first of all, we create monopolies, and you really need to understand that this is not about the best service or the most innovative company. It's about market structure. Really, as soon as you allow to use network effects and you allow companies to shut their users or to create these walls that their users cannot communicate with competitors, there is no real competition. It's even not a free market, I would say. It's like a monopoly. And another thing is really threatening for our democratic structure. For example, when we think about how Facebook became a critical infrastructure for a lot of protest movements. I myself organized a demonstration in Hamburg once, and we set up Facebook groups. It was against the ACTA treaty, and thousands of people came. And I was thinking, what if Facebook decided one day before the demonstration just to shut down our event? And actually, this is something that happened to me some months ago. Because right now we have in Germany a problem with a right-wing populist party. It's called the AfD. And I'm also a member of the administration team of a Facebook group. And we are informing people about, for example, violence of neo-Nazi groups, etc. And we have, during the last month, Facebook several times just blocked our page. And this is not a small page. Several thousand, 10,000 people are following this page. And this is really troubling, for example, before an election, where a right-wing populist party is about to get maybe 10 or 20%. Because, yeah, when one company can decide, you don't really have freedom of speech from my point of view. Another interesting thing I stumbled upon during my research on Facebook was how Facebook behaves in Turkey. Just go to a Turkish activist and ask him what he thinks about freedom of speech on Facebook, because Facebook is banning Kurdish party sites, Kurdish activist sites on a large scale in Turkey. And it's not because like they are doing evil stuff or something. It's because Facebook just considers, yeah, well, I'm risking to be banned in a large market, so maybe I shouldn't care so much about freedom of speech and just kick these people out and do what Erdogan tells me to do. So, fortunately, Facebook is not the only single social network out there, because in 2010, 4 young students from the US were so inspired by a talk given by Eben Moglen at their university that they thought we need to do something about it and we need to start a new social network. We just do it from the scratch, we start it new, and it must be free software, free of commercial interests, and also decentralized. And they started a Kickstarter campaign and asked for only about $10,000 in funding in order to be able to trade their internships and like holiday jobs for full-time work for Diaspora. And what they got was not $10,000 but it took them just 1 month to raise $200,000 in funding. So Diaspora, the launch of Diaspora showed that there is a huge number of people out there who are really looking for an alternative, who are really troubled by all these constant changes of terms of service of Facebook, who are troubled that their data is used for advertisement. And that is why Diaspora was funded, to do something about that. So first of all, let me explain to you what the difference between a decentralized and a centralized social network is. In a centralized social network, there is just one single entity that controls the network. For example, there is one owner of the network who can just maybe flip something or like press the red button and shut the whole service down, who can decide on terms of service, who can decide whether or not Kurdish activists are allowed to post there. And in a decentralized structure, and by the way, the whole idea of the World Wide Web is like a decentralized infrastructure. In a decentralized infrastructure, you have many different providers, you have many different servers, and even if one like server or provider says, yeah, I will kick you out or I shut this down, you can just move to another server and just continue to be part of the social network. And this means a lot for privacy, and this means a lot also for censorship. In a decentralized social network, it's almost impossible to censor something because people can just move to another server. And in a decentralized social network, the main issue with privacy is that you can just choose your server of trust. This means that you are not forced to go to a company and give them all their private data. Maybe you know someone who has a server, or maybe your local hackerspace, or maybe an NGO you trust, and you can just sign up at this like place of trust. And there's another important main idea that is enforced by Diaspora. Diaspora is also a network where you can choose what identity you have. When you log in on Facebook, Facebook tells you to use your real name, and I don't know how many people were already banned on Facebook because they just used a nickname and someone just clicked on a request button and told Facebook, no, this is not Donald Duck, but maybe Katharina Nocun. This is different with Diaspora. Diaspora is free in the sense that you are free to use any identity you want to use. And I think this is really, really important because when you connect, maybe when you think about your different roles in life, for example, I behave different with my parents than with my boyfriend. Then I behave different when I talk to colleagues from work than I talk to friends. And we have many, many different roles in life. And by forcing us to use our real name on Facebook, Facebook forces us to get information about all these different aspects of life. And they can do as many privacy settings as they want to do. This doesn't change that still Facebook gets all the information. And this is like, from my point of view, the root of a problem, and this will never change as long as the data set of us, of our friends and of us is more worth when it's connected with our real name. And of course, Diaspora is not a commercial system. But the founders of Diaspora thought not only about how to provide a new social network, but they were also thinking about what different structure can we maybe build on a small level that could maybe show the people how an alternative social network structure could work out. And that's why they founded the Federation. And the Federation is like a coalition or an alliance between different small decentralized social networks who share the same protocol. This means that you can communicate between different social networks, and you can, for example, I have an account on Diaspora, and I can still communicate with friends who have an account on Friendica, which is a totally different social network, but still, because it allows for almost perfect interaction between the different accounts of users, it behaves like one big social network. And you see, in this, with such a decentralized open shared protocol version of decentralized social network, when you have had this in place on a large scale, when you, for example, had Facebook, which would be forced to open their gates to let other social networks to communicate with them, you would have real competition. I would, for example, be able to say, well, Facebook, I read your terms of service, they are longer than the US Constitution, and what the fuck, I will not sign this. I simply don't want to. I will go to a competitor, and you know what? This competitor offers me everything you do, and still maybe they don't sell my data, maybe they give me more privacy, and maybe they even have, don't know, maybe just a nicer layout. And this way you would have at least competition, and right now you don't have competition. And interestingly, this decentralized alliance of small decentralized social networks has managed during the last years to gather a relatively stable user base, which is approximately 20,000 monthly active users. This means 20,000 people log in at least once per month on these networks. And there are more than 600,000 registered users. This means users that have logged in at least once during the last year and have an account there. And I did some research because I was curious, who are these 30,000 people who post on Diaspora, and what are they interested in? And I did data analysis on the most used hashtags on Diaspora, which is the most active, or which was during the last year the most active pod in the Diaspora network. It's hosted in Germany. And you see there on the screen the most used hashtags, and they show that it's a pretty nerdy community, but also a community which is interested in art and music and photography. And this gives me hope that through growing with groups of like-minded people, through growing with, for example, with hackerspaces, through growing with communities of artists or political activists, these decentralized networks really can grow. Of course, as an activist, I know if I want to have like huge outreach, if I want to organize a demonstration with 10,000 people, I still will sign up on Facebook and make a Facebook event. But what if I just want to communicate with a small set of people? I know they would maybe join an alternative social network, and they would maybe share on this platform information they wouldn't share on another platform. I think in this sense, decentralized social networks have really a potential to grow. And interestingly, there are already like small communities who use these decentralized networks. So I would really invite you just to check these alternatives out. If you are sick of Facebook and how Facebook treats you as a user, just maybe join diaspora.com out. There is a link to a list with a lot of different Diaspora servers, a lot of different pods. You can register for free, you can just test, you can invite friends, you can use hashtags, you can upload photos and everything. And there will be soon coming some other features. I talked with some developers, and they are planning to implement a group feature, which will be really interesting, especially for political groups. And they also want to implement XMPP, which is like a standard open protocol for chat. So there will be group chat on Diaspora. And from my point of view, we really need these decentralized alternatives because this is the critical infrastructure, not only for protests, but also for our private relationships. And I don't want a corporation, and especially not one single corporation, to be in a position of power to control these sensible data flows. So thank you, and I'm really curious what your questions will be.
Questions, yes.
Hi. Do you know if there are any fully peer-to-peer social networks up right now? Because Diaspora, it still needs not a central server, but it still needs the hub, I think it's called. No, the pod.
Pod?
Yeah. So do you know of any P2P developments?
I mean, there are fully peer-to-peer. I mean, to explain, a fully peer-to-peer social network would not consist of different servers, but every user would be a server at the same time. So it's like maybe file sharing in some cases. And yeah, there is some research on that, but unfortunately it's a bit complicated, especially when you have private data and you don't want to spread like your relationship information all over the internet to any accidental users. You need encryption, and scalable encryption which is at the same time so fast that it doesn't stop you is a bit tricky. So there are some like groups which are experimenting with it, but I don't know a decent like a fully peer-to-peer social network which is really like out of beta stadium. But I would love to have one too.
All right, thank you.
Is it working? Working? Okay. My question was, part of the success of Facebook and Twitter, I think, is that there are corporations and media websites actually publishing information constantly, so that people receive a feed that is always updated. And the difference that I see when I'm on Diaspora, that I don't have this. And if I do, I have just on the hashtag that I've decided to follow myself. So the experience is a lot more active in a way, which is good, but it's also bad because if I want that level of engagement, I will never have it there, or at least not for the moment. Do you see this changing in the future, for example?
I think when you want to have a social network growing, you really need to think strategically. And I know that there are some alliances between newspapers and developers of Diaspora in Germany. For example, there is one newspaper from Bavaria, it's called Donau-Kurier. They even give regular funding for a Diaspora pod because at some point when there was a huge debate about terms of service on Facebook, they decided, yeah, we want our own social network just for internal purposes. So that's why they are funding. And there is another large newspaper which is called Taz in Germany, which regularly posts all their articles on Facebook. But I personally know who is responsible at this newspaper. You still need ambassadors inside the media who like push it, who say we need a share button not only for Twitter and Facebook but also for Diaspora. And I also know a developer who's working with Mozilla, and he introduced like the Diaspora share button to like the standard, and you still need these ambassadors. So I would recommend just try to find a group and just join as a group a new social network. Otherwise, it's difficult to have this interaction, or just ask maybe media you like, why are you not on Diaspora? I'm on Diaspora and I want to receive your information there.
Hello. Thank you very much for your talk. I would like to know if someone can translate my question from Spanish. Okay, I will try. Okay, I'm a privacy lawyer, so I was expecting you. And I would like to ask you if you know there is a new normativa. ¿Alguien sabe cómo se dice normativa en inglés? The law, well, it's changing the law in Europe, as you know, for data protection. And I was wondering if you think that it's covering or you are trying to protect. I don't know if
I mean, there are some, talking about social networks, there are some interesting things in the new privacy regulation. For example, there is this right to data portability, that you are allowed to request, I want a dump of my data, please Facebook give me a dump of my complete data in a machine-readable form, and then I can maybe put it in another social network. But yeah, I'm really curious how it will work out, because it's still, I'm still curious what kind of format they will use, if it would be just possible, for example, to take a data dump from Facebook and just implement it to a competitor. And I think these are the things we will see how this works out in practice. But actually, I think the new EU privacy regulation did some good stuff. For example, higher fines are always good when you talk about privacy regulation, because right now, I mean, it's still like you can make billions with selling data or aggregating data, and when you just don't care about privacy laws and don't respect them and break the rules, the fine is really, I mean, they are laughing about it. Just some 10,000 euros it's a joke.
we can see it from 2018. I think it's going to be like the application.
What was your question again?
No, I mean, this new regulation,
Yeah.
it's going to be en vigor.
Yeah.
I don't know the word in English, I'm sorry. Like, it's going to be applicable or establishment?
Perhaps I can answer it to you. Because in the new regulation, there is one part, what it describes, that the maximum penalty of a corporate is 4% of the global turnout. Which means that 4% of everything what they sell is their maximum penalty. And so this is something what all the risk departments in companies are totally aware of. But as Katharina said, you are in a situation where, for example, with data portability, there are no concrete details inside of the law, which means that they can give you some kind of data dump, and you or, for example, Diaspora has to pass for their network. But because there is no definition, that will be a very interesting part, how the institutions will apply it to the companies.
Thank you very much, both.
Is there currently some interoperability or gateway service between Diaspora and Facebook? If I'm on a Diaspora pod, can I connect to people who are on Facebook?
Yeah, actually there was, I think 1 year ago, it was possible to connect between Friendica and Facebook, but then Facebook introduced like a new, changed some parameters, and now it's, as far as I know, not possible anymore. So that's the main problem. And still, when you have interconnection, it was still incomplete interconnection. So you still needed a Facebook account and like a Diaspora account, and then you can maybe just copy like your message to another network. And inside the federation, for example, you just need one account, and that's much better.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, more questions or remarks? Okay, then we thank you, Katharina, for all your work and for your presentation. And of course, there's room to talk to each of the speakers. If you want to get more information, please just use them while they're here in Barcelona. We're going to continue this session right away. We're just going to set up. There's 4 more speakers coming up. 4 more